Good afternoon, and welcome to the monthly Budget Committee meeting. This is the monthly June meeting, and we have a reasonable agenda today. We were to begin with an executive session. The Law Committee met yesterday, and it was determined that I think it will be one case that will come for settlement does not need to come to the Budget Committee. I think we've heard it several times, and the settlement does not come within our numbers, so it's just going to be moved forward. So there will be no executive session as such. I have been requested to make a statement, so I shall do that. The Board of Education request by a June 12th, 2025 motion, quote, for an interim appropriation in the amount of $1,957,842 to the fiscal year 2025-26 operating budget for the best use of the funds as determined by the Board of Education, close quote, is not on the June 17th, 2025, that's today's BET Budget Committee agenda. Town Attorney Barbara Schellenberg provided the following further explanation to BET, RTM, Schools Administration, and Finance Department leadership. And I quote, "The request for an interim appropriation is not in legal order because it does not comply with town charter requirements. Article 2, Section 30B of the charter, when read in conjunction with Article 2, Section 23 of the charter, clearly provides that a request for an interim appropriation shall be made when an occasion arises whereby a specific amount of additional money actually will be needed for a specific purpose. A general, open-ended request, such as the one at issue here, does not suffice. A request for an interim appropriation also cannot be used solely as a means to seek an amendment to an approved budget." Close quote. I shall add that I did exchange an email with Ben Branyan, who's the school's chief operating officer, whether they would want to, withdraw, and Ben said that he does not have the authority. Again, we did not have this written explanation until this morning, so time was short. Anyway, thank you. So now we'll move on to the remainder of our agenda. So go back to the agenda. Our first item is parking services, and it's for $30,000 for a transfer for meter pole project.
Good afternoon, how are you?
Great.
Okay. You sit over here?
You can sit there, that's fine.
Yeah,
Right.
that's fine.
You could actually slide the table a bit this way, too.
I'm good, I'm good.
Okay,
How's
you're
that?
fine.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
All right. So we're requesting today that we move $30,000 from object code 52300 to 53750. The money in 52300 was basically money for snow plowing and snow removal that we didn't use. If you look at Exhibit A, which is in your handout here,
Right.
it'll show you that currently, we just got the new meter heads for Greenwich Avenue. In the last 2 years, we replaced all of the sleeves and the bases that were made out of plastic on Greenwich Avenue with aluminum. If you look at B, the next page, that's what the current ones on Greenwich Avenue look like. They're beautiful. We also had the meter heads painted because we didn't know if we were going to get the capital improvement money. So what our wish is to do is to take that $30,000 purchase, get rid of the plastic bases and sleeves that we have on the side streets around Greenwich Avenue and replace them with aluminum ones. And then we're going to take the heads off of the existing Greenwich Avenue meters that have been refurbished and put them on the side streets so that all of our meters look new and are nice and painted. The other ones are faded. And we actually, when we refurbished these meters, we took the insides out and made sure everything was working properly, and if it was worn out, we replaced the parts. So that's basically what we're asking for.
Great, thank you. So I should have either asked you to introduce yourself or said, so that Leo knows who's with us, and I'll just ask everyone else to introduce themselves later on. We have Deputy Chief Jim Bonney with us today,
Yes.
and Luann Bellantoni is sitting in the back. Right?
Yep.
So we welcome Luann as well. So do we have any questions? All right, Leslie?
And this is not related, I'm approved this is not an issue. But the functionality of the heads, are they different? The new ones have more functionality than the old ones?
The new ones do everything.
Right.
You know, these are the old ones that take coins.
And they're staying, those are the
We
ones
still use a bunch of these meters on all the side streets around Greenwich Avenue, but not on Greenwich Avenue. So the side streets that are usually longer-term parking, they take coins. And we just want to replace the old beat-up ones with these refurbished ones since we have them.
So the Avenue is going to get the ones that do everything, and the side streets will get the
We'll
refurbished?
continue to have the existing functionality, but they'll have new refurbished-looking ones that look better. And we're going to replace, we used to use plastic sleeves and bases around the poles, and we found, you know, if you look at the picture, we found they do not wear well.
Right.
That the aluminum work way better. So we're going to buy aluminum ones and replace them so that they look nicer and
They'll have a longer
last
life.
longer. Yeah,
Yeah.
they last longer.
David, do you have any questions?
No.
So
Okay,
I'll
great.
make a motion to recommend approval of the transfer of $30,000. Is it 30,000 even?
Yeah,
Yes.
it is 30.
30,000,
I'll second that and suggest routine.
routine.
Okay, so motion made by Leslie Moriarty, seconded by Harry Fisher, for the $30,000 for the transfer for beater pole project as a routine project. Those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That was unanimously approved, 4-0-0. You do not have to come next Monday night, and these really do look great. The
Thank you very
refurbished
much.
ones really do look great.
But we
so
try, you know.
Thank you.
All right,
Thanks,
Thank
Jim.
you.
take care.
So our next item on the agenda is BW 12 for Public Works. It's $325,000 capital carry forward for the Greenwich Point facility improvement. And we have with us today our Commissioner of Public Works.
Jim Michael, Commissioner of Public Works. Yeah, so,
Luigi's.
and
Oh,
Luigi
yeah,
Romano's in
and
the
Luigi
back.
Romano is, and Luigi Romano is sitting in the back. He's our head of our
Building
building
construction,
improvement and construction
building
department.
construction and maintenance division, so.
Construction and maintenance? So
Yes.
DPW, construction and maintenance. But anyway, Luigi.
yeah.
Welcome, Luigi.
So what this is this is something you've probably seen before, but we got these funds back in 2023. We've been working with the Greenwich Point Conservancy to do some rehab over at the Chimes Building. We're still working through the design. When that initial request came through, it was, there was some conditions put on it. Those conditions we're still working to get met, so we haven't come for the release of the conditions yet. And so this is just, we're asking for this money to be carried forward, so.
Super. Is this the one? Anyway, any questions, Harry?
This is the actual construction money, not the design money, correct?
This is the construction money that, yes, correct.
Right, and what's the expected total budget for construction? Do you have a number for that yet?
We're still working that out, so.
Still working that out.
Yeah.
Okay.
As we get through the design, so there's been a few different discussions on what the scope exactly of what they're looking for is going to be, so that's gonna potentially modify that number a little bit.
Okay.
So what was the number estimated at the time we did that? Do you have that number, Jim?
The appropriation was for 325, and that was what the estimate was for.
But there was no estimate for the construction? I mean, usually there's like a future number that we have in there.
That's what the
That is-
325
That's what the
is.
325
Oh,
is.
that's the three,
Yeah.
okay.
Do you have more questions? Just estimated timing, or there were a number of difficult issues I know that you're still working through, and the responsibility of who's doing what. I think the town approved refurbishing and raising the restrooms, or I'm having some recollection, but just the overall timing of when you think this project might get started, or is that not clear yet?
It's not clear exactly because we're trying to finalize all the different pieces of the project. I do know that there is a desire to get the chimes put back in to the building, but that may be done without the need for these funds and so forth, just to get the chimes back into the building. But the actual rest of the project, we're anticipating we'll have a good understanding by this fall of where it will be, probably construction maybe in this next spring, would be my guess.
Thank you.
There was an issue, as I remember, though, with the septic or something. Has that been resolved?
That's all part of this whole plan.
No, that's
so,
right,
Yeah, that's
but-
all what we're trying to work out exactly, so.
Thank you.
So,
All right,
Do you have any, David?
No question.
Okay.
I'll move approval of this and suggest routine.
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Harry Fisher, seconded by Leslie Moriarty as a routine item. Those in favor? Okay, 400. That's unanimously approved, and you don't have to come next Monday on that. And so we have another one, again for Public Works, $15,000 transfer for temporary salaries.
Yeah, so this is to get us through the end of the year. In our building inspection division, we've experienced an increase in permit volume, and we've had a few members that have been out on medical leave. And so in order to keep our level of service where it was, we just needed some temporary staff or increase some of our part-timers' staff hours. So that's kind of what we're looking for. We're just trying to get us through the end of the year on that, so.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask a question. The source of the funds coming from work transfer to and from, what's that account typically? I mean, it's expenses that you would pay to another department, but
So in this case, we're pulling the money out of our salary line in engineering, and part of that's due to some of the, we've had a vacancy in engineering for a little bit that we've been trying to fill. In addition, Gabriella, who you also know, moved to the deputy commissioner role. So her salary has been shifted from engineering to that, and that left a vacancy there. So we have a little extra funding in the engineering salaries line, so that's where
But
it's
that's
coming.
not the salary line, but I know that you can move money among the lines. That's in the 192 line, not 101. But is it 192 that has this surplus? Or, I'm just curious on the object code that's listed on our sheet. It's 51920, which is not salaries.
Of course, I didn't bring my,
It is a budgeted 100 item. It's for salaries that are transferred in. And if that's available, it's part of the 100 salary accounts.
Okay. So I'll make the motion to approve the transfer.
Can I just ask
Yeah,
one
yeah,
question?
oh, sorry.
So, when we look, we also see our own staff reports in our monthly meeting, and building permits have been very strong. But one of the things that, obviously, as we look ahead, we look at the budget and the fees that we get, with the increased value of the buildings. So when we get the information on building permits from the assessor's office, it doesn't divide between tax exempt nonprofits and the for-profits. Do you have any feel at this point? I know we've had a lot of school construction and so forth, and so is that continuing so that, we won't have taxable buildings being constructed, or is there a shift back to the commercial buildings? Do you have any sense of that?
I personally don't have a sense of that. I know that, I know, I could look into it a little bit, but I know that we're not seeing, yes, we are seeing a number of school buildings on the books, but we're seeing a decent number of other, all of our normal stuff on the books. We're not seeing a big shift downward, and they haven't brought to my attention that we're seeing like, we need something, we have some concerns here that we're not seeing the same type of stuff. They're telling me that we're as busy, if not busier than normal, so.
No, I mean, it looks like a lot, when we're getting these reports in recently, it looks like there's a lot of activity, but I just, we also have seen that many of the buildings getting built don't necessarily increase our taxable grand list. And, we would be interested, but there's no rush because we won't get to that point for, a couple months plus.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I'm sorry, Leslie, you
I was
started
going
to
to
make a motion.
so I was going to make the motion to recommend approval of the transfer of $15,000 within the DPW major object codes.
I'll second that and suggest routine.
Okay, so we have a motion made by Leslie Moriarty, seconded by Harry Fisher, as a routine item.
Before we take a vote, Roland and Agnes, can I ask you a question first? These are transferring funds within DPW, and they're all in the 100 accounts. Does it even need our approval? Doesn't the commissioner have the authority to move money between? We don't need the approval for this because you have the authority to move among your departments.
Amongst all the departments do as well.
After all that.
Amongst departments under his control, between 351 and 302, you're moving money still within the 100s. I think that's permitted per our rules, right? It is.
So should we just
Is there-
take the vote
is there a
and then,
cap or
and then
anything
not-
on that?
I'm sorry?
There's no financial limit on that. You have the authority.
Even though it's two different departments?
That's what I
But
asked the
there-
question.
But
and-
if you, but the commissioner controls both those departments and therefore has the budgetary
So
authority.
let's approve
Well,
this
Roland's
and then
had something
confirm
to
this.
say.
No, they can move it, if it's, say, salaries or 100s, they can move it from, the engineering to highway to,
So among departments, they have the
just
authority.
like the police, they can move it from uniform patrol over to
Administration,
administration or wherever they need it.
Because it's all one department, it's just different divisions.
right.
Okay. So we don't need further action?
So do we take a vote?
No, we don't need
No,
to.
I'm sorry, Leslie, do you withdraw your motion?
I'll
then?
withdraw the motion and
I
sorry to
agree.
waste your
Second?
time.
Did you withdraw your second, Harry?
I withdraw.
Okay, so, anyway, thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
I think we need that training for every 2 years with our staff to remind them of their authorities.
I think we need a lot more training, including that of the charter, based on our earlier conversation. So I
agree.
concur with you, Leslie. Okay, so now we've come to the police department. We're moving right along. And we have our police chief and good afternoon.
Good
So,
afternoon, and we're also is Deputy Chief Mark Zuccarello, for the record.
well, and police chief Hebe too, because Leo may not know everyone. We
I
have
thought you
a-
had already introduced me, but
Oh, I'm sorry.
And just so we don't get off on the wrong foot, this one does require BET approval because of the major object codes.
Right. Okay, so, Jim?
We're requesting to transfer
Oh,
from.
sorry, Mark, I didn't,
It was a curveball to me as well. Requesting to transfer $120,000 into our 100 lines from our 300 and 400 lines to cover the additional costs that occurred from the SSA contract negotiations, as well as some legal labor-related costs that happened over this year that were above an unexpected when we were doing our previous year's budget.
Okay. Do we have any questions? Leslie?
I do. One is just our common practice, because I know we usually we do set up encumbrances when contracts are not yet settled in the salary accounts, so that we don't have an unexpected negative expense. So the contract hit, do we encumber in overtime, or is that something that's not usually covered?
So it was when we did when the budget was prepared, it was 2.5 was the anticipated GWI increase, but the contract settled at 2.75.
And stipends.
And the stipends also went up, so that was where the difference is. And when it was not, when the contract, I guess, was prepared or presented originally, the 24-25 amount wasn't put into this year for right now. That's the shortfall. But yes, we did, it was projected for a 2.5. However, 2.75 was what the GWI came at.
I see. Okay, but you don't have the issue in the labor, in the 101 account, that you're short that 0.25% increase?
That's for a labor issue that's going on now, step 3, labor board
It's the
issue.
current.
Completely separate from the contract.
Same attorney, but different issue.
No, I actually was just talking and thinking about the contract, the labor contract, which settled the 2.75 versus 2.5. If we only encumbered for an expected 2.5 settlement, you might have had a shortfall in your 101 account also, not just overtime account, if I'm following the logic correctly. But you're not asking for that. So you had room enough in your 101 to absorb the difference in the contract settlement, apparently. You may not have the details, but that is something that it's interesting to think about the overtime when we have the open contracts. Thank you. It
Do we have
should,
any other questions?
the only other thing I wanted to note is the overtime budget was 2.8 million, and so it's a small percentage of the total.
Harry, do you have any questions? David?
No, I would make a motion that we approve this item, DD5.
Okay,
I'll second that and suggest routine.
okay. Motion made by David Weisbrod, seconded by Harry Fisher, as a routine item. Those in favor? So that motion passed 4-0-0, and you do not have to come to the BET for this item. Okay.
I do, before we go to the next item, I just wanted to make acknowledgement, although he said he thought I put him in front of the bus here. Deputy Chief Zuccarella has done a considerable amount of learning about the budget, and I think it's important for the command staff to have a good grasp, for succession training and to recognize what we have to do as managers. So part of the reason I wanted him to present it was a lot of it was his significant work at managing the budget to keep it within our budget, but also recognize that we have all these outlying events that we can't control. And, he worked on both the budget and with a lot of our negotiating for the Silver Shield contract. So it's easy to put him in front of the mic because he knows exactly what's going on.
So
there.
I think that's very good, and it just relates to the, kind of things that Leslie was talking about earlier when we were talking with DPW or the BOE. I think that the more people who begin to understand the process, the better it will be. And, and understand that even all of those costs, Mark, aren't necessarily in the police department. When the contract is negotiated, it impacts the fixed charges and, it's changing our numbers. And when you add people or whatever, the same thing happens too. So anyway.
But
thank
I
you.
also want to acknowledge it had to take a lot of work to come up with the 7 different items here that you took money from. Clearly you must have a tight budget this year to
Yeah,
have to
and
go
Sharing
that
credit,
far.
stand by.
And our business office manager, Gail Fanning, we've been working on this for the last few months to do the projections, and she was able to do the numbers, because I still get confused on 3s, 4s, 5s.
Yeah, we've implemented for some time now, every 2 weeks, we review our budget, and Gail presents what the percentage of what we've expended. Remember, 94% of our budget is payroll, so we have to
Right.
keep track of that. And with, we have a retirement August 1st, we had 3 resignations, so, and we're in the process of trying to hire. One of the challenges, an outside challenge that's significant is, it really takes us about 20, for us to replace the 4 that are leaving and the 1 open position is going to take 24 months. From hiring them and then sending them to the academy, field training, and getting them all through the system, it really does take us a considerable amount of time. It's not like we can just hire someone off the street, so that's part of the challenge. But the number, our percentage of assigned strength has been much improved versus our, available strength, so it's getting better.
So we're going through a little bit of that ourselves in finance. A little different, but not necessarily any easier. So we have another request, and this time also from the police department for $840.60. $50,000.
It's really the increase from.
It's a TOO
TOO
adjustment for a police schedule coordinator.
Correct. So I'll do the historical beginning first. In 2016, it was my desire to bring side job accountability back into underneath the department. And these are for work that the police.
Excuse me. If you would like to talk, could you just go out in the hall or just, thank you. I'm sorry.
So in 2016, I had the desire to create a little better safety and more accountability for the officers doing side work. And we decided to bring that back in under the police department. Prior to that, if an officer worked for Eversource or worked at a private party or any kind of an event, they would be hired by an individual, and that individual would pay them directly. We felt that it would be much better accountability for us to have that in-house so we could track where people were working, when they were working, and assure them that they got paid. So in 2016, we presented to you a plan to have a increase in our headcount that created the side job coordinator position. This position was difficult to fill, and we had a number of candidates, but none of them were qualified other than one. That one individual was Bill Paul, who is a disabled retired police officer from the town of Greenwich. He has a great deal of knowledge, being that he served over a dozen years before he was forced to retire due to an injury of the system, and also has a knack for details and numbers. So it was a very good fit. However, because he was a retiree, he was limited to a number of 25 hours a week due to the fact that there's a limitation. Nathaniel Witherell, the fire department, and us, if you have a retiree, they have that limit. For other departments, it's 15 hours. So he's done the job for a number of years, doing the best he can with the limited hours. And I'll be honest, he's probably gives the town a few minutes more every day than he's supposed to, but he really cares about making sure that everything is done right. Recently, with a charter change, it would allow us to, instead of limiting his number of hours to 25, but to have him become a full-time employee. Now, the job was always budgeted for a full-time employee until about 2 years ago, when there was a mysterious change from 100% of that position to, I believe, 0.73. We won't use any names, Ben Branyan, but it was adjusted so that, because we weren't filling the position, because we felt that it was the most effective to have Bill Paul at 25 hours would be doing better than a full-timer who wasn't able to understand the system. So with the charter change, we would like to increase Bill Paul's hours. One, to allow him to fulfill all of the requirements of the job. And as I'm sure you've looked at the job description that we originally posted under the town, and then there's a second one that under the audit that was recently completed, that the job has really expanded. One example of that is that number of school crossings has increased, and he's going to bill about $60,000 a month for 9 months of the year for school crossings. Also, in the last 2 years, he's kind of automated and modernized his system to utilize Munis better so that we're able to at least get close to our numbers matching the finance department. I've given up on trying to get them to be exact right, because if I run the report on Monday and Mark runs it on Friday, there can be some differences, not discrepancies. Additionally, the side job coordinator position, when it was created, we had a fee attached to every hour that the officer worked. That fee is $5 an hour. So on average, the contractor or the person who hires is paying about $40 a service fee for the processing of the officer's work. The officer is paid by the town immediately on their payroll, on their normal check, and then we get reimbursement. One of the challenges that we hope that will be resolved with Bill Paul becoming full-time is the monies that are still outstanding. And as I presented to you in your budget presentation a couple months ago, we have numbers, again, they constantly change, but it's approximately $219,000 in outstanding monies, and that's since the beginning of the program. 2020 was a good year. We had 100% collection. We have a little bit of a high mark in 2023 because we have one disputed bill for about $23,000 that we're still working on. But that, if we were to remove that one, 2023 was about $23,000. And then in 2024, about $11,000 outstanding. And of course, it looks high in the 2024, 2025, about $125,000, but there's about a 90-day delay. So if we were able to have him add these hours, we would be able to do those collections and also be able to streamline the processing so that we'd have a better understanding of exactly what our liabilities are and what our revenue is for this particular service that we provide the town.
Any questions? Harry?
Yeah, you and I had a conversation about that $5 an hour fee, maybe bumping that to 6 or 7. Have you thought more about that?
So again, we're looking at the hourly rate that the person, first of all, a lot of the jobs require a 4-hour minimum. So it's $320 plus $40. So it gets to be kind of the price point where some of the work might be out, they decide that they don't want to hire an officer. But we could certainly look at that as a possibility. It's been about 10 years since we've increased it. But I just don't want us to work our way out of the market. I'd much prefer the officers to be working those jobs rather than a flagman or the contractor try to cut corners and not utilize an officer, because it improves the traffic and it improves safety by having the officer there.
And the one fee that we did increase was the vehicle use fee. That was 2 years ago, we, in talking with the fleet department, we raised that fee. It used to be $25 a day, now it's $100. And that money's going back to fleet to help repair the cars.
Okay, thank you.
So, okay. Oh, I'm going to follow up on Harry's point, though. Leslie, did you have
No,
something?
go ahead, Paul.
No, you can go next.
No, I just wanted to make the comment as a follow-up. There may be differentiation of fees too. I'd hate to have our nonprofits, for example, be burdened with even higher fees as they're using traffic control as well. So there may be different ways to look at. But you indicate another reason, which is it's a 4-hour minimum anyway, so it's not just a $5 fee.
David?
Or
So
DPW
I do
case.
think it's something worthwhile looking at. And I was, so
Yeah.
this position would start July 1, the full-time? Is that-
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Or, I'm sorry, does this this goes to the RTM?
No?
No, for the addition? No, I guess, no, it doesn't go to the RTM, correct. Well, it's an addition to the TOL at what point?
Which is BET, delegated to the BET.
So, the aging of the receivables, and, so I think it would be worthwhile to kind of get a feel for that receivables issue as of June 30th, and, like an aging or whatever. Maybe we could talk about that some month it's sufficiently after year end, like maybe October or something like that. And also, I think, it would give you time to kind of look at these fees and, think about that a little bit more. Because I think Harry is right, that fee hasn't been changed since the program was put in place, how many years ago? And, Mark, I think it was a good idea to increase the car charge, because in many of these jobs, it's for many hours, and the car is out of service in a non-direct kind of job. So I think that would be useful. On this now, we're increasing our benefit costs. So in this case, and with these fees, are the fees, what happens to the fees?
I would love for them to come to the police department, but they go to the general fund.
So, and they've been about how much per year? About, just a,
Well,
Here's the chart from our budget.
about anywhere between 300 and as high as 475, so it's considerable.
Okay.
It's several $1 million since I initiated the program. But
Okay,
none of
okay.
those funds come to the police department, like I said.
so maybe
Because
in the
they may miss
fall,
that.
after, I'm
I
sorry?
can answer specifically. It's in the revenues in the police department, on the revenue side. They don't see it to offset the expenditures. The budget for the $5 is $360,000. They've collected $333 to date. And to Deputy Chief Zuccarella's comment, we budgeted $13,000 for the vehicle reimbursement, and they're over $72,000. So there's a dramatic increase on the vehicle side, but
But it's also a use of the vehicles outside of the normal work kind of flow, I would think, too. Number of vehicles that are, being used for alternative jobs rather than the primary jobs.
That's really a management choice.
No, I think that because the overall cost of the vehicles
not a-
may add to the number of vehicles needed, Harry. I think that makes, anyway, do we have
Well, let me
Any more
just
questions?
make one other comment, because this one, the aging of receivables is kind of interesting question, because if I recall, when we talk about this item, certainly the larger companies that we deal with, you have some leverage, right, with those. Once the receivable gets too large, you're not offering them services anymore, or you have to come to some agreement. So your collection rate at the end of the day stays very high. Is that correct?
It is
maybe
pretty
is
high. One
late.
of the things that we've talked about is potentially having, in addition to, like, say, going to small claims court for some of them, is perhaps, something even more valuable than embarrassing someone to go to small claims court, but not allowing them to get their beach card or their other town services until they've paid their bill to the town in all departments. So that was one of the things that we were thinking about, is when we look at maybe a fee structure change, is also some penalty for a resident who doesn't make sure that they, said that those private parties here and there, that can be $800 here or there, and it starts to add up. So that's one of the other things we're looking at.
Harry?
Do you charge interest?
No.
See, but,
There's another thought.
Yeah, exactly. I think, so what would be a comfortable month to come back, like, just to talk about that, and, where we have discussion items,
Well, you could-
October?
Okay.
Sometime, no, I'm asking you, is
No, that's
that
fine.
give you plenty of time after fiscal year end, June 30th, so there's plenty of time?
Right, because all the 24, that'll give us enough time to see how that's
Right,
played
yeah.
out, so that's
We could
fine.
also leave it to the liaisons.
No, I think
a
it's better.
small- It's a small dollar
Yeah.
item. There's so many things
Small
that are
item.
important we should
Okay.
be talking about.
Okay, so do we have,
But let me just, if you can, you talked about some expansion. Is there an expansion to the role of what you're expecting, or if it's more just being able to complete the work? more-
It's kind of like, again, he's always behind the 8 ball, and, we think that, his work ethic is very high, but we should be allowing him to get the full-time schedule so that he can keep up with all the other items. And then there's also, the monthly audits, some additional requirements from the finance department and his utilization of Munis now. So it'll eventually get more efficient, but those are still things we're kind of behind. We have the kind of a training curve. And fortunately, Gail has helped him a lot with that, but that's, again, another person being taken away from their job to help him with that. So I think there'll be a value added altogether.
And I know the Munis initiative came from us, really, so it's better control of the actual accounting.
Right.
But I'll make a motion to, yep.
How did you arrive at the salary?
It is the position that he's in now. He's a part-time GMEA, and that is the salary. It's just the additional hours that he'd be getting. But the salary's already been slotted in.
Right,
The
also.
hourly rate, rather.
Yeah. It's also important to note that with this change in the charter, that his salary will cap out at $83,360, because of his salary cannot be more than a certain percentage of what his salary was when, the 100% of his salary when he was disabled and retired. So unless that's changed, and that might be something for future, but it will take him a little bit of time before he'll get to that max if he gets normal gross wage increases over a number of years. And hopefully he'll be here for some time.
Okay,
So I'll make the motion to approve the change from part-time to full-time, along with the estimated $50,841 increase in annual employee expense.
I'll second that.
is this a routine or is this not routine?
I'd be happy to have it routine.
But it hasn't been to the HR committee yet just because of the schedule.
going tomorrow.
I know.
The
So,
HR committee
It
can't
won't be
vote
a
on it.
vote.
okay, so you wanted, I'm sorry, you wanted.
I'm
it routine?
suggesting that it could be routine. I think that would be okay. And
Okay.
if-
I'll
if-
agree to that.
I would suggest that it be non-routine since there aren't a quorum of people here, and I suggest that that's a question.
So I will say it's routine, because both Harry and Leslie have said that, unless they want to reconsider it.
Well, I would
Harry can
reconsider
always
based on the fact that a member expressed non-routine, and that's all it really takes to
Okay.
change it to non-routine. So
And you're
we'll leave
agreeable?
this as non-routine.
Okay, so take it as non-routine.
I think it would be routine if the HR committee had remained there, but we don't have that committee, so.
Okay, so those
Okay.
in,
So
those in
based on
favor-
it not being routine, then should we still go to the scheduled HR committee meeting, or should we just go to the full or BET?
You'll get the
Karen says
opportunity-
yes.
Get the opportunity to educate one more person.
Okay, so those in favor? Those opposed? That motion is passed 4-0-0. So HR committee tomorrow and on to the full BET next Monday on that.
Okay.
Thank you. So, I don't know whether this is not your responsibility, but I do want to sort of make the one comment that kind of is applicable. We have been trying to keep the overall town headcount, TOO, flat. So, when you increase, then you look for some other opportunity elsewhere, which is not necessarily in the police department. But I don't see the town administrator in the audience, and these are the kind of things that the town needs to look at. It's been part of the budget guidelines this year, last year, the year before, and that's still kind of where we are. But this is, I didn't bring it up for yours, but I do think that it's important that we continue to remind ourselves that we need to overall manage the situation. Thank you. So our next is is the Finance Department. And it is also a table of organization adjustment, this time for $42,245.51. And it is to add to the department a full-time customer services specialist. So who is presenting this?
Okay, this is somewhat of a backup plan. There's a couple parts to it. The first part was that we had a part-timer, .712, I think they are, the percentage, for a number of years, who worked in the pre-audit as accounts payable person. The gentleman worked in the back, and when COVID came along, he basically abandoned the job and walked out, and the position was vacated. And what we did is we wanted to back that position up, fill that position up and back up the accounts payable function. Also, as we all know, the assistant to the comptroller also became pregnant, who has a delivery date of July 15th. She plays a critical role to the BET, not only internally with the finance department. I mean, you all know what her role is, whether it's getting rooms for the BET, schedule the changes, does the annual scheduling of rooms, does the minutes, et cetera, et cetera. In previous years, I actually was the backup for a number of years when we went through changes as far as doing the minutes. I've got less than 2 weeks left. So what we were looking at collectively between Roland, Joan Lynch, and myself was an idea that we needed a backup plan, a contingency plan, just in case there's an issue where Samantha does not come back. We don't anticipate that, but we needed a plan in place. So what we did collectively was come together. We looked at reorganizational plans, and we did look at, we did take into account the fact that it is an increase in headcount, and we take that serious. However, we needed a solution, a contingency plan to back up her potential non-return. So what we did is we had an excellent candidate in Leo, who was a part-timer, and we wanted an insurance policy to make sure that we didn't lose two of them potentially. So what we did collectively in finance was come up with a plan to add a position, and this position has two roles. The first, more important role is to back up the BET with the, as you can see right now, Samantha wasn't able to come today for health reasons, and Leo is filling in the backup plan, and she will be 100% over the next FMLA period for up to 12 weeks. So what we have before you is a request to create a position to have a backup plan for the BET, for the assistant to the comptroller. In addition, we also are backfilling that old position to back up the accounts payable position where we've had turnover for the last couple of years. So I think, I don't know if Roland, did I miss anything as far as? That's it. Yeah, so we'll take any questions, but being that you're more intimately involved with the inner workings of finance as opposed to a special duty coordinator, it's obvious what we need to do there.
Right. No, it's amazing all the work that gets done by so few people already.
Yeah.
It is just amazing to me. So do we have any questions? Harry? Leslie?
No, I just wanted to add, because we know we have two existing vacancies in full-time positions right now, right, with the deputy controller and the assistant budget director positions. And I know I'm expecting that there's conversations with the change in leadership that we're having in the department of potentially reorganizations or moving job responsibilities around. And it's my understanding this position is part of that conversation as well. But so I think it gives more capabilities really within the department in backing up every responsibility as well as getting other new potential work getting done. Is that a fair statement with what you know about the conversations?
David, any comments? So, do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion to recommend approval of the change from part-time to full-time of the customer service rep. There's a title change too within the finance department at an approximate estimated cost annually of about $42,000.
I'll second that. We might as well keep it non-routine since everybody will be at the meeting anyway.
I was just going to say that, we'll all be there for tomorrow's potential meeting with the HR committee, and we'll be there Monday night.
So just, I know we're about ready to take a vote, but Karen, did you have any further comments on this or just wait until tomorrow's HR committee? Okay, super. So those in favor? Those opposed? That vote passes 4-0-0. Thank you. And we have Nathaniel Witherall. And we have a first-time team, too. We have the new chair of the Finance Committee with us also, right? So. So if you'd like to introduce yourselves, this is Brad Radulbaki.
Yes, Brad Radulbaki.
You need the microphone on, sorry.
Yes, hi, this is Brad Radulbaki. I am the head of the Finance Committee at the Nathaniel Witherall.
I'm Kelly, Director of Finance of Witherall.
Thank you. And they're here to request a transfer of $500,000 for supplies and materials. So would you like to explain? Someone, either Kelly or Brad?
Sure. So we're here to request to transfer $500,000 from the fringe benefit object code level 57100 to the supplies and materials budget for fiscal year 2025, object code 53400. The reason for this transfer because the dietary, pharmacy, and maintenance costs were unfavorable to budget, while fringe benefit have a surplus due to open positions and favorable healthcare insurance charges.
So do I have any questions? Harry?
Yeah, my question is really to Roland. I don't ever recall transfer from fringe benefits to cover operating expenses. Have we done that before? With Nathaniel Witherall or other departments?
Are we making sure that all of our fringe benefit costs are being covered? I mean, we get reimbursed by them, right?
You need the mic.
Yes, and we calculate that every month, almost on an actual basis, particularly since the biggest one is the healthcare. So who's ever enrolled that month, that's what they get charged. But they have had surpluses in their benefits, which they have used to cover shortfalls at other times.
And the surplus, I guess, is because they never really staff up to full staff versus using agency employees?
It's partially true. I think they budget for the full-time positions, but they don't have full-time positions staffed up completely. So they use part-timers, which only have Medicare expenses.
Right. Okay.
I have a question. I just wanted to understand, I know that some of the increase in food expense had to do with the delay, I think had to do with the delay in the installation of the new tray system and the way that you're using labor. That may not be the exact reason, but have the issues, the reasons that those accounts are over budget, are they issues that have been resolved and won't continue going forward, or was it a budgeting issue that you just didn't have enough money in there from the start? And each one may be separate reasons. But can you give us a little color to that?
Sure, Leslie. It will be both for both reasons. So what was budgeted, it was under budget for some of the reasons. So the tray line implementation, the project finally finished in April this year. So we expect that in the future for food services and supplies will be according to budget, and that will be in our implementation. Also, for the transition of pharmacy services from Pro-Life to CVS does offer better benefit for some of the antibiotics, but we will work with nursing department. They did say that for certain packages and used medications, they will return to the pharmacy, the CVS, our vendors. So we're working on those implementation to improve expenditures for the future years. But in terms of budget, it was under budget. Also maintenance, the building is quite old, so certain infrastructures and like we had 2 water damages and floods in March, happens in March 8th and March 30th. So many rooms were impacted, so we had to kind of emergency expenditure for that department.
Thank you.
Do you have the amounts for each of the 3 accounts to which you're transferring?
I do have that in the high level, but I will send you more details if you want. But
No,
for
the high
right-
level for each of the 3,
For
dietary, food, pharmacy, and maintenance.
So food right now is 215,000. Maintenance for mechanical and supplies is 83. Custodian, household supplies, 33. Office supplies is 73,000. Pharmacy, 74,000. So for those accounts, it will be over 500,000. However, within the 53 level series, we have surplus in the other areas. So
I'm sorry,
the-
how much was supplies?
73.
So household supplies, 33,000.
Thank you.
But office supplies, you said was 73, is that right?
Office, right.
Okay, that one sort of jumps off the page, that you need office supplies, an additional 73,000 versus your budget?
Well, it could be a budget issue, right? That-
Yeah,
that just
'cause-
wasn't
Seems
part
like
of
it's a
the
budget issue.
But I think if you can work with the finance department, maybe indicate those accounts, the major object, not the object codes,
The object
actually,
code?
to show where the money's going and to break up the 500,000.
Sure, I will send the details to finance.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Super. Any more questions, David? No. Any more questions, Leslie?
Oh,
So I'll make a motion to recommend approval of a transfer of $500,000 to various accounts within Nathaniel Witherell's budget. And I'd say routine
yeah,
transfers.
yeah, I think I'll second it and suggest routine.
But routine, excuse me, just routine subject to receipt of that information in the next couple of days so that the blue sheet can be modified prior
Yeah.
to Monday's meeting, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Will do.
How many are we?
Mic on?
Oh, sorry. Hi, Brad. How many of the staff, what's the number of staff that we're below in terms of the budgeting?
I would say 8, so mainly for nursing department, we need 2 full-time RN, 2 full-time LPNs, at least 4 full-time CNAs. So we have had difficulty recruiting nursing staff.
Right, thank you.
I'm sorry. So may I take a vote on the motion by Leslie Moriarty, seconded by Harry Fisher as a routine item, but with that modest input that you're going to send to us? Those in favor? 4. Those opposed? 0. Again, that motion is passed unanimously. You won't have to come to the next meeting, but if you just about that information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then we will see you back in July, though, on the release of conditions. which was, that was discussed and put on the agenda, and it was removed after input from Roland Geiger and Joan Lynch to please defer that until July. So we'll see you in next month. Okay, thank you. Okay, so our, next we have on the agenda the new business economic conditions. So what's the good news? Uh-oh, they're smiling. Do we have good news? So we do have a report. I thought it looked good.
So this, the revenues all look pretty much like they have been. Taxes and the transfers from other funds, which is $760,000, which we closed out from, I forgot where we closed it out from, Pete.
Is there any new information in here? I know that as it affects, as we get towards the year end and estimate a fund balance, that we're still maybe 2 million short of replenishing the 23.5 million we used to close last year's budget. Are we still running in that path? Because you look at these numbers, you say, well, we're, 11.9 ahead on revenues, 10.8 sort of, it's not versus budget, but we're 8 million below the budgeted level per the explanation. So it's getting us closer to the 23.5, but not quite there. Is that fair?
A couple things. First of all, on the expenditure side, when I was doing my extrapolation and projections, et cetera, I always had the Board of Ed as break even. So any of the subsequent news, depending on how you look at it, is good, bad, whatever, doesn't impact that number, okay?
Right.
However, it's a little bit outside of what you're asking me, but we were surprised, Agnes, Roland, and myself, to learn that the Board of Ed surplus could be as high as 2.5 million. And we don't, it's 2 weeks left in the year, and we don't have a way of figuring out what their surplus is. It's not a good way to do budgeting. The reason is, it's to back away from that criticism, is that they encumber the two largest areas of expense, except for the salaries, okay? One is the SPED, which we are guessing that the surplus is going to be a large part of that, the special education, but we all know that. The other side is there's a lot of information that's confusing to me, confusing to others about the bus contract. Some of it I can't discuss in a public meeting, but the numbers are they're everywhere. We're short 1.9. I said, well, wait a minute, we found it because we're going to move the start times at the schools. So on the expense side, notwithstanding the Board of Ed, which I can't use because I used zero, and they're going to, I guess, exercise the state statute that says that they're going to keep the non-lapsing amount. That's a total different story, and it's outside the question you just asked. On the revenue side, the taxes are coming in a little higher. What I've experienced, which I've not seen before, and I can't recollect if it happened before, is the state is slow in paying as far as reimbursing. We can overcome that, and I'll give you a couple examples. We have budgeted $461,000 for LoCIP. We haven't gotten it yet, and the year's almost over. But the good news is I could book that as a receivable in revenue. We're not going to lose that. There's also, we found another $293,000 of LoCIP that we would like to book. But again, the state is slow with reimbursing. To Leslie Tarkenton's favorite area, in which I always look at, is where they've changed the way we get reimbursed with LoTSIP, where we get it up front. We don't know. It just, we haven't gotten much of anything this year as far as reimbursements. Unfortunately, there was one reimbursement that we got a couple of years ago on the Davis Avenue Bridge. We had to repay $382,000 a couple of weeks ago, which is the opposite of a revenue receipt. It's a clawback. The three big ones which you can see in here are trending well to the previous years, which is the interest income, the building permits, and the conveyance tax. Where the tipping fees are low, okay, but some of that you're going to get on the expense side is a reciprocating, good news, bad news, so they level out. The planned services is the one that really confuses me because I haven't dove in deep and haven't really pressed the fire marshal's office, but between what we increased on the revenue side and the budget and what we got is $600,000 or $700,000. And there doesn't seem to be a correlation between this dip because the planned services are tied into the building
They
permits.
said that they were working on town projects that they're not charging for, is the explanation at the budget time.
Yeah, but that again,
So they have
the
the
correlation
expense,
should be that if your building permits trend the same, you should have planned services should be trending the same also. They shouldn't be dipping dramatically. You follow the logic in that?
Right, I mean,
Regardless of whether you're working on CMS or you're working on Old Granite School, I can't figure that out. And that's a
Yeah.
topic for another day. I always expected that we would get a LoTSIP or something like that to move the needle a little bit. But the answer, it's a long-winded way of saying, notwithstanding the expenses, and I discount it, the Board of Education, we're still at that number. It's going to be a negative number, anywhere from $1 to $2 to $3 million, depending on encumbrances. Encumbrances are the surprise we get every year. We had like $9 million of encumbrances last year, and the Board of Ed had $4 million of encumbrances. That's another area that hits the expense side. On a budgetary basis, they're expenses, not on a GAAP basis. And
But encumbrances, and this is, remind me, I know that you've said this before, but encumbrances, if they're not used for expenses within a certain period of time, they disappear, right? They have 90 days, or is it six?
It depends, but if they don't use them, it turns into revenue to the general fund.
yeah,
That's how we.
Oh, so it goes in the following fiscal year.
on
so
a
it doesn't-
budgetary basis,
okay.
yeah, they're revenue.
I just don't know when you close the books are there things that you reverse before you close the books? But you're saying no, for encumbrances, if they're not used, it's revenue in the following year.
So anything that was.
It's a timing.
Encumbered last June that wasn't spent, that's get closed out, it'll show up as revenue in this year's activity.
How does that relate to, or if it does, revenues? You just explained you can book expected receivables from the state for the LoCIP funds. When that comes in, that would go towards the current fiscal year because it would pay down that receivable. But if the money didn't materialize, you then have you would, just like the clawback, it would be a negative in a future year's receivable? Anyway, that's detail. It's an accountant thing. Sorry.
So that's the general fund. Golf course still is doing well. School lunch dipped a little bit, but we had a very healthy fund balance through the COVID years. So what we did there is they didn't need for the 26 budget, a subsidy. Some of the good news, bad news is we had some serious issues, which was pointed out in the audit, the single audit in the area of grants at the Board of Education. The bad news is that we got smacked around by the auditors pretty good, and they issued they modified the opinion, which I've never seen. However, again, this is an expenditure report. This is not a modification of the town's financials. Expenditures report don't have the revenue side, okay? So, and they zeroed in on a couple of grants that were over in the Board of Education that repeated. The good news is that we started meeting with Ben and Patrick, and we picked up millions of dollars of grants, receipts that they were not applying for on a timely basis. So all of the bad news that surfaced in the audits has turned around, excuse me, and it looks like the grants fund is back to normal as far as applying for the grants in a timely manner. And then,
Can you recover prior grant funds that you didn't apply for or didn't?
It depends how far back we go. We had some of them, we went back and they were closed. And it was interesting, I mean, some of them, we didn't spend the grant, so we had to give that back. Other ones, we didn't spend it, but they took a different amount back. And there were some grants that we never applied for it, that are now closed.
Okay, but the bottom line of all those positive and negatives is it sounds like it's more positive. Because 2 years ago, we had to put in 400,000 or some.
$600,000 was accrued by
$600,000.
the Board of Education, anticipating what it's going to take to clean up these grants, and I don't think we're going to need that. We wrote a check to the state of,
So Roland, you brought up a good point. Is there any way we can take that, the grants they didn't apply for or whatever that amount of money and sort of charge their, expenses this year to bring down any excess balance?
they already took the hit 3 years ago when they set up the $600,000. They took a hit into their operations for that.
So they should actually get a positive, they could reverse some of that so they can get a larger surplus, but that's not going to happen before the end of the year.
But actually, how much of the back collections that I guess you've received, or schools have received, applies to previous fiscal years?
Well, first of all, they're multi-year grants. So when you talk about a grant, they're more than 1 year, they're 2 years. So normally they're going to be, if you can receive them in year 2, and some of them belong from year 1, they're multi-year grants. But I think we picked up about $3.5 million, and it's going to flip some of the negative fund balance we had in the last audit. So that's somewhat of a good news story.
But the 3.5 comes to the general fund?
No. This is just the grants fund.
The grant fund?
I'm just taking the liberty to
No, I think it's good for us to be
give-
updated across the board.
Because I don't have these opportunities any longer, and I just want to take advantage of it.
No, but it's also important because, people talk about our budget, 500,000, 502, whatever.
Yeah.
But, that isn't our budget. We also have to add all these other funds. And so there's a lot more issues.
The point I was trying to make, it had a negative impact on the general fund in
Right.
previous years. And the point I was trying to make is it's behind us, okay? It's a collaborative effort. We're led by Joan and Roland and Agnes going forward, and Patrick and Ben. A lot of effort has been put into that area. It needed addressing, and it got addressing. The blame is a lack of continuity, and the people that I would throw under the bus are no longer here. It's harsh to criticize somebody, but it's just simply that new people coming into positions without proper training make mistakes. Anybody would make mistakes.
So, no, I think you brought up an important point, and, that single audit really relates to the operating, but we also have the capital. And quite frankly, I am very concerned that also in our large school projects, that we really get very disciplined about, you know, our record keeping, how we're doing it. I mean, in both of these, the largest, Old Greenwich School and Central Middle School, we have, you know, another third party sort of managing the project and whatever. But it has to be very disciplined in terms of, you've applied for a grant, this is how you said you're going to spend the money. We have to be disciplined about, you know, making sure we're keeping good records, because they're going to come back in the end, as we all know, someday, maybe, and audit us again. And just like the other grant you're talking about for bridges, we may have to return the money if we don't have the records. Now, you didn't bring
Now,
up,
those are reimbursement grants.
Yeah, no,
The-
no,
the
I
school
just, I want to qualify that, because that was, the way that worked, that 382,000, was nobody's fault, okay? The way it worked was, the way the LOTSIP works with the reimbursement, as it was told to me, is that the state reimburses you in advance. Yeah, I mean,
Right.
they prepay you based on a competitive bid. The project was bid for X number of dollars, okay? What happened was, we got the LoCIP prepayment based on the bid, and then Eversource said, time out. He said, this piece over here, we're gonna do, you're not gonna do. So a portion of that reimbursement applied to the Eversource work up in the trees, around the wires and all that stuff, so that that had to be bifurcated, and we got over prepaid. So we simply gave back money that we weren't entitled to. That's different to
Right.
what you're referring to is.
Correct.
Okay.
I agree with you.
I didn't want to.
Right.
Conflate or combine, you know,
so, you know, right now, the schools did, you know, apply for the audit from the state for 3 major projects, Hamilton Avenue, Mesa, and New Lebanon. And, you know, it's my understanding that they are trying to have the state auditors come in for the schools, you know, like at the same time. But they haven't set this date up yet, even though the state requested it a couple months ago, or whatever it was, because they're still looking for the documentation for New Lebanon School to complete the documentation to be able to meet the audits. So it's a very disciplined process, and you know, it just, you know, we talked about lessons learned or whatever before. I think we need to make sure that, you know, in training, that the building committees have better training. Most of these people have never been on a building committee before.
yeah.
What?
Yeah, Central Middle School is a very rigorous, detailed process that is being managed by JLL and not Greenwich Public Schools. So I don't know how Old Greenwich is doing it, but I can tell you that CMS we're about to get our second payment already.
Right, but second payments are easy. It's when it gets down the road and you have to go back and do
We've
it.
got all that in a very detailed,
Okay.
very large spreadsheet
And
that
I
I've
can-
shared with everybody, actually.
And I can add, because now the entryway project is at the end of the process. You know, that project gets moved a little bit more quickly because it's at the administrative level, since it's less than $1 million reimbursement. And again, we also have an outside, we have CSG who's handling that. But it's all based on Munis. They need copies of the checks, they need copies of the invoices and signed, but the accounts payable process requires the signed invoice in advance. It's in the system. So the documentation, people aren't scurrying around after the fact. The bill doesn't get paid unless that documentation is there. Mesa, they have it. It's New Leb, the one.
New
that-
Lebanon is the one.
And they haven't yet gone to the state to ask for the audit yet. They have for the others.
No,
We're
New
waiting.
Lebanon, they asked for the audit for the 3. They're working on those side things. It's Glenville. that's the-
Glenville, sorry,
Yeah,
you're right.
Right. Anyway, we're getting to details.
Yeah, back to the beginning, just to make sure I got this right. You were saying, Pete, at the very beginning, that the bus situation at the schools is so confusing. Is it, are we, does that level of confusion cause us not to be able to come up with an estimate that's reliable as to the use of fund balance for this year?
No. It's there, the Board of Ed issues, all of the issues surrounding the budget, the $4 million cut, all them issues have no impact on the fund balance for this year.
So then what is the current,
Well, let me just qualify that. When I say that, I was answering Leslie Moriarty's question about what my projections were based on. I put the Board of Ed in at 0, meaning they're not returning anything, okay? So that's what I throw that in about the bus contract. If, for example, the schools had a surplus of $2 million, my answer, and they didn't exercise the state statute and keep the 2 million, 2 million would have been break even. You follow? Okay.
I do follow.
That's,
so we're still the 2 million deficit?
yeah, but surrounding that is, there's issues that are gonna spill into next year, because you have a monopolistic situation where you have one bus company, which hopefully that gets resolved, and you have competition with another bus company to come in, be competitive. But the confusion, at least to me, is about, and it started earlier this year, maybe 6 months ago, we have a shortfall this year on the bus contract. We don't have a shortfall on the bus contract. Then next year, we have a shortfall on the bus contract. But then again, we don't have a shortfall because they're changing the bus times. It's my confusion. I guess it's everybody's, because the numbers, and they all seem to come around 1.9 or $2 million. That's what I meant by confusion. But they don't impact the fund balance for this year.
Thanks.
And then just a couple of quick comments. The tax collector sent an email out, the tax bills are out. So let's see if we could reach the $45 million in prepayments from a year ago, and then hit the record of 60 million. And then one final comment is, we're trending at a 5% return on the pension through 11 months. So if June, we need, the hurdle is 6%. So if 5% is not good, but it's not real bad, because 3 or 4 months ago, we thought it was going to be a disaster, but, so that's where we are with the pension. And again, that has, although that has an impact on the ADEC, the actuarially determined employer contribution, we do smooth the good and the bad over 5 years. So I just wanted to put in some of the other funds as far as results, what we know today.
So that's helpful. So on the good news side, though, when we look at our revenues in the next page, on our conveyance taxes, building permits, and interest, in all 3 categories, we've already exceeded our budget for this year. We may not be at the level of last year, but we've exceeded this year's budget, and we're now over by $2.4 million. And there is good news, right?
We need that good news to erase
Right.
the
I
use
mean,
of fund balance.
Right, no, but I just wanted to make that comment. And then I'd like to make another comment. For next year, you know, in order to keep track of things like Pete's talking about, like the bridges or the, whatever they have, LOSIP and all these other things, can we, because I've now gotten to the point where, like, just to track the bridges, I've been like, I have to go in and look fiscal year 25, year to date. Then I look at last month's and look at fiscal year 25, and I'm subtracting it. Could we just put that 1 month, no subtractions or additions, but just put like what we've collected that 1 month on the revenue page? So that we know, okay, yes, we did get a payment in on Riversville or Round Hill Road. Because when we met with Gabriella, Pete, I think she said that she expected, well, she had billed for like an additional $2 million, right? Initially, she said, and we've seen a lot more. And yet our numbers aren't showing that yet.
We haven't received them.
I know, that's what I'm saying. And so every month I go and I take a look at last month and I go down each individual item. So if we could just have one column, we don't have to subtract it or add it, just to know what we're getting in that 1 month.
Oh, even by month.
Just 1 month, the current month.
But just
Current
show
month,
the
and then
current month, but then year-to-date. so it just
25
adds one
year-to-date,
column.
24 year-to-date, and the difference, just adding one more column. So that I have to subtract. Do you understand what I'm saying? We can meet after, or tomorrow. Okay, so do we have any more other comments on this or on the expenses? Or we finished the economic report? So just on the economic report, I wanted to make a comment on, are we finished? The economic report? Okay. Which I do some months, is the, the BLS Consumer Price Index for our area this month was flat, 0. No inflation increase whatsoever, 0. But on an annualized basis for the last 12 months, it's up 3.4%. So it's declining, but the month itself is 0. So I just thought that was reporting that. Okay. Now back to the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the May 15th, 2025 minutes?
I'll move approval of the May 16th, 2025 minutes as presented to us at the meeting.
And there's
Which
that-
were,
This was at our desk?
Yes.
yes, that's at your desk.
I'll second. I'll second.
Okay, moved by Harry Fisher, seconded by Leslie Moriarty. Those in favor?
Aye.
400. We don't, do I need to repeat that? I noticed my microphone was off. The May minutes were approved by motion by Harry Fisher, seconded by Leslie Moriarty with a 400 vote. There's no chair's report as such, other than to comment that our next meeting is scheduled for July 15th. And for the Budget Committee, it's going to be a busy agenda. We moved ahead a couple of things from this month that will be on next month's agenda, so it should be a busy agenda. And one of the sort of sadder occasions, depending on how you look at it, is that this is our last meeting with Pete as our wonderful.
No, actually, I won't get paid for it, but I made a commitment, if we need to deal with the Affordable Trust issue, the clawback.
Oh, I haven't forgotten that you're going to be with us in July. But anyway, this is your last official meeting as the town's controller, and I want to thank you for all the wonderful, everything that you've done for all of us, and so thank you so much, and all the best, too. And we'll have further opportunities
You're
on that,
welcome. Yeah.
but, so is there a motion
I'll
to,
move we adjourn.
I'll second.
moved by Harry Fisher, seconded by Leslie Moriarty, those in favor, 400 at 2:29. Thank you very much.